Welcome, beloved people of God. And I want to thank you for joining me at whatever time of the day or week you have been able to make time to do so. This is the second in a series of talks that Imogen and I are doing about stewardship. And last week, Imogen talked about the stewarding of relationships. This week, I'd like to reflect with you about the stewarding of our gifts and talents, those things that are a part of our DNA that have been bequeathed to us by the Creator. And many of our gifts and talents get acknowledged and then honed and sharpened through the living of our lives. Going through a reflection on this is different this year than last when we were able to gather and we were able to have discussion, to share our thoughts with one another, to ask questions, to process what we had heard. But now we're in this strange season of our lives when being able to share in the manner we did last year is just not possible. But that doesn't mean that we can't think about and discern how we use our spiritual gifts in concert with others, not just within our community of faith, but also within our families and within our neighborhoods and within our social groups. We remain socially distant for the time being, but we are trying so hard in many ways to be and to remain socially engaged one with the other. And that is accomplished in a huge way through the gift of technology and the gift of so many people who have been willing to dig deep and use their spiritual gifts and talents, some of which they may not have even known they had. They just took leaps of faith and answered a call. And they're using their gifts and talents to help us to continue to be engaged in ways that we never dreamed about. As I think about my own life, I realize that I'm doing things that I haven't done in decades, at least not on a regular basis. It's kind of a resurrection of skills I possess, but maybe have been dormant in me that haven't been used in a very long time. My husband, for example, is amazed that I'm cooking, something I don't particularly enjoy, but something in which I can be pretty good at. So as I'm reflecting during this stewardship season on the gifts God has given me, on my talents and my skills, I invite us all to do the same. What are some of the things that we are being called to do that have surfaced, things that we're being called to do that themselves have surfaced during this season of our collective lives together? Some of us who are not professional educators are now finding that we must assume a teaching role as our children are being placed in virtual learning environments. Some of us are learning how to be multitaskers and to be disciplined in working from home. Some of us are learning to be learners, especially in this pandemic world that is coupled, where we have a coupling with a period of social unrest and societal and political tension. Because many of the things that are happening in our country are not new challenges. Many are symptoms of problems that have existed for many decades and are exacerbated by the times in which we are now living. So I'm learning that I need to humble myself and open up to the possibility that I have more to learn and more truths to acknowledge and accept. This time and this reflection on gifts and talents reminds me of this verse from Ephesians. And I may not quote it exactly, but it says, some of us have been given the gifts of being prophets and being apostles and being pastors and being teachers. And I'm going to extrapolate a little and say, and some of us have been given the gifts of being video editors and videographers and worship leaders, facilitators, musicians. And some of us have been given the gift of having the innate ability to foster relationships that help to put their faith into action. And you know what? In these in non-pandemic times, we may not have even volunteered to do some of the things that we're doing now. We may not have realized we even had those gifts, but a call went out and people have graciously volunteered and discovered something within themselves that may have been a latent gift and talent. In that passage from Ephesians, the Apostle Paul says that the use of our gifts that God has given us are to equip God's people for works of service so that the body of Christ can be built up to experience unity in mind and purpose, demonstrating what it means to be Jesus followers. And so, as I think about the stewarding of gifts and talents, I also think about the gift of time. And how are we stewarding the time, the very limited time that God has given us? Time is being used in ways different than it used to be. We have to balance things differently than we used to. I find that I have to work very hard to ensure that I have work-life balance in my week. How am I readjusting how I prioritize my time to ensure that I'm approaching work-life balance? Am I leaving time for self-care? Am I leaving time to have quality interactions with my husband and my kids and my sisters and family? How am I contributing to the wholeness and nurturing of my family, of my immediate family, my family of origin, and my friends' family and my church family? You know, they all have calls upon us. How do we make not just the physical space, but also the emotional space to answer those calls? How do we prioritize which ones we answer first? And there are no simple answers to that. There's no magic pill. There's something that requires us to reflect on and to discern with God's help how we achieve work-life balance. But work-life balance is something that is essential for us to stay healthy and for the health of our families and our social units even. One thing that has become important to me, more important to me during this time is that I stay engaged with the different parts of my family and friends network, my sisters and cousins and nieces and nephews, my friends, my children, and their families. And as I think about our church family, thanks be to God, we are still a worshiping and a learning community. And I reflect on all the folks who use their gifts and talents, including the gifts of time, to make that happen. From our lectors to our musicians to our videographer and video editor to our acolytes and other young people, some of whom have been asked to preach or participate in other ways, and they do it. I've reflected on the myriad of other ministries within CGS, within the Church of the Good Shepherd, like our stewardship committee and our Bible studies and our vestry and the finance committee, youth and family ministries, bringing exciting offerings and reimagining ways of honoring familiar traditions, using gifts and talents that may not have been used in non-pandemic times. I think of our outreach committee who are coming together and developing a strategy and vision of what our faith in action will look like. And then there are some segments of that are already going full steam ahead, like One Way. Listening to and caring about the challenges of our neighbors. What are they facing? And then collaboratively working with other faith communities to develop strategies and actions to address these challenges. I reflect on adult formation and the fact that we are still trying to do adult formation in a meaningful and relevant way with our Common Ground series and our Sacred Ground and so many other ways in which we are trying to remain engaged. The call, my friends, is repeatedly going out for us all to dig deep and prioritize how we can participate in using our gifts to equip us for works of service so that the body of Christ, that's who we are, the body of Christ can be built up to experience unity in mind and purpose, as the Apostle Paul said. I'm inviting us all into a process and a time of discernment to help us as the Church of the Good Shepherd, a community of Jesus followers walking the way of the cross, to testify to what, where, and how God is calling us to use our gifts and talents and to be church.